Okay, so I'll leave that to you, Madhu Mangal. Prabhu, you can keep an eye on the front door.
Here, I'm here.
Knock on the front door, you can let them in. Hare Krishna. Everyone's welcome to this discussion on Bhagavad Gita. So before we begin, if you are just joining us for the first time, so excuse me if you've heard this before, for those who have been with us before, I'm just repeating again, but there might be some newcomers here. So again, if you want to ask a question, you're quite welcome to unmute, or you can make good use of the chat. Yeah. And if you like to read, you just raise your hand. You're welcome to read. We might not be able to get to everyone who wants to read. Sometimes we have quite a lot of discussion, even on one verse. So, but if you have your hand up, you want to read, then I can call on you to read if we have time. So we like to encourage discussion and questions, as I mentioned. So there's no time scale we're on. We're just taking each verse and we read a verse in a purple. And then if there's any discussion at all, we can discuss, or any questions. And I like to also get input from others here. There are many devotees here who have been studying Bhagavad Gita for many years. So I also like to offer the questions out as well. There's many experienced learner devotees with us. So without further ado, now I've already shared my screen from what I can make out. Is that correct?
Yes, it is on. It is on the screen.
Yeah,
it is on.
Okay, it's on. So, Madhu Mangal, I can see people at the door. Okay.
Yeah, let them in.
Hare Krishna, let them in. Okay. So welcome again, everyone. Welcome again, everyone. Let's offer some prayers to Srila Prabhupada. It is his Bhagavad Gita as it is that we are reading. And by his grace, we can have some understanding of this sacred conversation. Namo Om Vishnu Badaya Krishna Bistaya Bhutale Shemati Bhakti Vedanta Swamti Namane Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nivasesha Sunnivari Pashtatara Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Katadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So what I'd like to do is give a little quick review, but just beginning from chapter 4. We're beginning today text 3 of chapter 4. So just to a little quick overview of verses 1 and 2. Well, verse 1, Krishna is giving a history of the Bhagavad Gita. Myself repeating back. Who is that? Might be Mother. Okay, Hare Krishna, that's better. Okay. Yeah, so quick review of verse 1 of chapter 4. Krishna here is giving a history of the Bhagavad Gita, or is explaining specifically why he gave this knowledge, and specifically he gave it to the saintly kings, as described here. Why? In order to protect the citizens. And to protect the citizens from what? Well, we described that last week. That's based on, in chapter 3, Arjuna asked a question. What is it that leads someone to do things that are to engage in activities which are which cause destruction? Yeah, what is it that forces one to do something, even though they know it's not good for them? So Krishna answers that. He explains that is lust. So that's why Krishna is explaining this for mankind, going back hundreds of thousands of years, to enable us to overcome our lower nature, and to cultivate spiritual knowledge. Prabhupada says to free us from the material bondage of lust. Now, lust, it means in one sense of the term, there's a gross side of it, but then there's a subtle side of it, which means that desire to look over or try and control the world, for our own personal benefit. So Prabhupada there mentions in the purport, human life is meant for spiritual cultivation. And what impedes that spiritual cultivation is this, is lust. Yeah. So Prabhupada explains we should cultivate this transcendental knowledge, interesting through education, culture, and devotion. So he gives a rough estimate of the history of Bhagavad Gita. Mentions Bhagavad Gita is as good as the Vedas because it's spoken by Krishna. In that sense, it's known as Apurushaya. Got a mute sign. Called Apurushaya, which means it's superhuman. Yeah. So, and then text 2, why does Krishna speak to our, more text 2 is more of a history. It's for saintly kings, Prabhupada mentions. It's not for demonic persons. And as we read today, Prabhupada's meaning of demonic is simply those who give a wrong interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. So actually, it's meant to be received by saintly kings. Prabhupada mentions who otherwise the demonic persons, they give another meaning, who dissipate its value for no one's benefit. So Prabhupada speaks quite strongly here. You know, Prabhupada is very direct. And if you want to know why this is Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita is called Bhagavad Gita as it is, then you can read the purport to text 2. Prabhupada makes it quite a clear, he's quite strong on this point. Yeah, that it shouldn't, that it should come in parampara, not according to different interpretations, not according, Prabhupada said, to one's personal whims. Yeah. Now then Prabhupada brings it to the present moment. He sees there's many editions of the Bhagavad Gita, so therefore there was a need for English Bhagavad Gita coming in parampara, which can give the actual meaning as Krishna originally explained it to Arjuna. So that's a very, very quick synopsis of. You can read more if you want, text 1 and 2. And there's something in. Yeah, someone here is, it's been answered already. Charu Gupta is asking, we are not starting from first chapter. Charu Gupta, Mother, we have been reading this for a few months now, and we started from the introduction. But just about 6 weeks ago, then we opened it up to other persons, to also take part in this wonderful discussion we're having. So we're joining at chapter 3, but all the recordings are there on their YouTube link you have there of all the other readings that we've done. So as you have time and inspiration, you can make use of that. Okay. So Prabhupada says here, those they do not accept the supremacy of Krishna. So in other words, but they make a good business of Krishna's words. And Prabhupada says this spirit is demonic. So this is Srila Prabhupada's interpretation of demonic. It means they're twisting a different meaning than Krishna's actual words. Yeah. So then the next verse we come is number 3. So why does Krishna speak this to Arjuna? He is not a king. What is his qualification? Yeah. So let's begin then with what verse we're on now? Is chapter verse of. We're beginning with
Verse 3.
3. Yes.
3, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
Yeah, it is human.
Something every time I can hear back at you. So you need to mute yourself. That's better. Okay. Okay, Mother Kishore, you can begin us, you can kick us off, and we can read text 3. Is this text 3 you're on?
Okay.
That's
Hare
1.
Krishna.
Okay. Just 1 second, I get to text 3. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Sa evayam maya teadya yogo praktah marat puratana bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hiyedam uttamam. Translation. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Purport. There are two classes of men, namely the devotee and the demon. The Lord selected Arjuna as the recipient of this great science owing to his being a devotee of the Lord. But for the demons, it is not possible to understand this great mysterious science. There are a number of editions of this great book of knowledge. Some of them have commentaries by devotees, and some of them have commentaries by the demons. Commentation by the devotees is real, whereas that of the demons is useless. Arjuna accepts Sri Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead, and any commentary on the Gita following in the footsteps of Arjuna is real devotional service to the cause of this great science. The demonic, however, do not accept Lord Krishna as he is. Instead, they concoct something about Krishna and mislead general readers from the path of Krishna's instructions. Here is the warning about such misleading paths. One should try to follow the disciplic succession from Arjuna and thus be benefited by this great science of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita.
Okay,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Bhagavad Kishore. Okay, any immediate specific questions here or reflections? One thing comes to mind is that if we want to understand the Bhagavad Gita, then we have to be in the same spirit or same mood as Arjuna. So that means to be a devotee of Krishna. So to be, as Krishna says, why is he speaking this to Arjuna? Originally, Bhagavad Gita is spoken to kings, rulers of planets, and Arjuna is not a king, he's not a ruler of planets, he is a prince. And specifically why he's choosing to speak to Arjuna, and mentions later, because he is not envious of Krishna, he's a devotee, and he's his Sakha, and he's his friend. So if we want to penetrate and understand the Gita in the same way that Arjuna did, then we have to be a devotee of Krishna. And then we can really enter the mysteries of the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, it would be just like Krishna is present before us if we have the right mood. Just as he was present before Arjuna, and no doubt had a dramatic effect, a transcendental, a very special effect on Arjuna, then in the same way, we should be like Arjuna. Yeah, and you notice Prabhupada's use of the word demonic. Can someone say something about that? What's Prabhupada? It sounds quite hard, isn't it? Prabhupada calling persons demons. What does
I
it
was
indicate?
thinking, sorry, I wanted to say something before. I think many people, if will listen and they will hear there are only two types of people, demoniac and devotees, I think they will find that very disturbing, but I think that's the real reality.
Okay, Mother Mangopa he's quoting from in the 16th chapter. It's called The Divine and Demonic Natures, and often also elsewhere in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and specifically there in 16th chapter, there's two types of persons. Yeah, they're either devotees or they're demonic. So how does everyone feel about that? Mother Manga's bringing up a point there. Navachandravali, I can see you speaking, but you're muted. No, she's nodding her head. There's enough.
I just have a thought here. Even if demons associate with Krishna, they will be purified, right?
Yeah, thank you, Anvesh. Even if those are demonic nature, they get association of Krishna or Krishna's devotees, surely there will be a transformation.
So, by hook or crook, even if the demons are reciting Krishna, even though they are non-aligning with what he is, still there is a possibility that on one fine day, they might come to an understanding of what all we are.
Yeah, thank you. let me put it another way. That's definitely very valuable, and Vesh, thank you. But let me put it another way. I'm sure some of you have friends that are not devotees. You have family members that are not devotees. Would you call them demons?
No, we call them impersonalist. They know that there is God and is Krishna, but they refuse to accept that Krishna is a person.
Yeah, so according to Prabhupada's interpretation, that's a demon.
No, but Prabhuji, they said that even if somebody even takes once the name of Krishna, then he is a devotee.
Yeah, true. One takes the name of Krishna, then he's a devoted. The best of persons is he who utters the name of Krishna. I think the point we're trying to bring out here is that that's correct, but also there's some persons who are innocent. They're not demonic by nature. So they may be influenced by a demonic culture, and they take on atheistic views or an atheistic lifestyle. But often such persons who are not actual demonic, when they hear the right thing or they get the right association, then they quickly change and take up different values in their life. So do you find there's a lot of persons who are of more of a saintly character, but because of the association and the environment, they take up, we could say, if we want to use the word, demonic ways, or they may go against the principles of religious life. But often it's due to bad association. So when they get right association, then they may quickly take up the principles to one degree or another, or take up the virtues and principles of a devotee's life. Now, out and out demons are the persons who, even understanding or hearing, not understanding, but just by hearing about Krishna, they're going to blaspheme him or deny his existence. And as Mother Rajkishore said, some persons even, these are known as Mayavadi philosophers. There's there's a Mayavadi and there's the impersonalist. Now the Mayavadis, in a word, suggest that for them, Krishna's pastimes is just like the goings on in this material world. It's all part of illusion. Yeah. So Prabhupada would term them, or that as that's the persons are more demonic. Then you got persons who actually take a, if you want, which say take a devilish pleasure, who do not think twice in causing harm and hurt to other people. Yeah, they have no, or we could have said they have no guilt. They have no, or what's another word? They have no repugnance. Sorry?
Remorse.
Yeah, they have no remorse. So these are kind of demons, but a lot of people are kind of innocent. I'm sure some of us might have been in that category, or perhaps it might have been, as soon as we heard Krishna's words, we accepted it and changed. But interesting how Srila Prabhupada making a strong point here, how wrong it is to give a wrong interpretation of the Gita, because the Gita is meant for everyone's well-being and benefit, and specifically that benefit can be had if one devotes themselves to Krishna. So for persons to give a wrong interpretation of Krishna's words, Prabhupada sees that as demonic. Krishna's trying to explain something to people in general, and persons claim to have knowledge of Gita, and they give a completely different meaning to what Krishna is trying to bring people to understand. Yeah? So for instance, there's one interpretation of Gita where when it comes to where Krishna says one should surrender unto him, this chapter 18, text 66, actually they say what is meant is not to Krishna, but it's to the impersonal within Krishna. And Prabhupada took great issue with that particular interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. So that's why Prabhupada is quite strong here. He calls it it's a demonic mentality to actually screw out a different meaning than Krishna's actual original meaning. So that, again, this is a commentary on the title of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. So any other comments or reflections on that?
People are jealous of Krishna because the whole book says Krishna is this, and they think, oh no, why is Krishna so much? My goddess is better and my God is better. And they become jealous. And that's where
yeah, it sounds like you might have had experience of that, Maharaj Kishore. Some relatives or friends, were they? Krishna makes quite a statement. You know, he says he is the supreme personality of Godhead. So it's quite a statement to make. But he's the only one who can say that, you know. He's the supreme personality of God. And to actually, and in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, in the introduction that we read, Srila Prabhupada explains that, okay, you may not have faith that Krishna is the supreme personality of God, but for at least the sake
Excuse
of...
me, I'm so sorry. Some people are in the waiting room. Could you please let them in?
Yeah,
Thank
Mother
you.
Mongol, you have to... There's persons
Should
waiting.
I am here. I'm pushing, but it takes few seconds till they come in.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so where was we? Yeah, so that's why, what was we speaking? Prabhupada got lost my train of thought then. Remind me, so yeah, that's why Prabhupada said at least one should accept, at least while reading, for one to have a chance of understanding, you have to accept, at least theoretically, this is to the more, for those who are more atheistic, at least theoretically, you have to accept Krishna as God if you want to understand this Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, it isn't gonna make any sense, you know. So, yes. Any other questions or comments on this?
Or if we go the sense that
Anvesh,
he's,
yes, please.
yeah, I mean, coming to the point which we are discussing now, if
Yeah.
we consider Krishna is everywhere and he can take any shape or form in this nature, as a tree or you or me or anyone. Okay, but here comes the question: if someone says, my God is great, or your God is great, but if we see Krishna in him,
If we see
that Krishna, even that form of God is even the derivative of Krishna. So how it is like, we say, instead of feeling ourselves like pride, it's saying my Krishna is great. Instead, we can say like he's also one form of Krishna. I mean,
well, Krishna does have different forms, as we do understand, but we should understand those forms according to Sastra. And they are described, the actual pastimes of that. Like, for instance, Lord Nrsingadev is actually a form of Krishna, Vishnu Tattva, and all his pastimes are explained. And there's the main principle, 10 incarnations of Krishna. And then Krishna also manifests his Shakti within certain persons. They're called Shakti Avesh. Yeah, so they are also described in Sastra. So we should be careful before we accept anyone and everyone as a incarnation of Krishna or a form of Krishna. It should be according to Sastra before we may accept that, because there are many persons who in the past who proclaim to be incarnations. And that was one of the, you could say, missions of Srila Prabhupada as well. Yeah, to try and give people the correct understanding based on Sastra of what is actual, what the incarnations of Krishna are. So I don't know if that's just addressing part of your comment stroke question there. And I think if I've understood the question as well, when us presenting Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead, now we might want to be careful is the right word, but we might want to be hesitant to who we may say that to. Yeah. Is you heard the statement, you shouldn't cast pearls before swine? That's a statement from the Bible. So some persons may not be ready to accept or to hear that as well. And in some conversations, it might create more of a argument than a conversation. For instance, if you're speaking to a Christian or Muslim and you tell them Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, then that's gonna, it probably won't create a nice conversation. So I know I often meet Muslims when I'm distributing books. I distribute Srila Prabhupada's books also on the street when I get an opportunity. And when I do meet Muslims, then I never start with a statement like that. You know, often I might say, well, Krishna, this Krishna is a name for God's beautiful, or for the beautiful aspect of God. And I explain, I don't say Krishna is a supreme personality of God, because that's going to immediately, you're going to get the same type of thing back. And we're really tired of this type of conversation. We really want to bring people to a higher understanding, but we have to be careful how we do it and careful how we present that, you know. And that will give chance for people to perhaps appreciate something of what we have to offer. Yeah, often I say, for example, God is not a Christian. Excuse me. God is not a Christian. God is not a Muslim. God is not a Hindu. God is just, he is transcendent to these material designations. You know, what we all have in common, with whether we're Christian, Muslim, or Hindu, or Jewish, or whatever it may be, is that we're all servants of God. We're all parts and parcels of him. So I try and take the conversation along those lines. I don't know if I answered your question, and Bresh, but I think if I did, I might have given it another slight different angle.
Yeah, yes, bro. That's clear. I mean, yeah. What I was always keep wondering is, as the generations pass and things evolve, man tries to get into a form where he can't understand the God, or he won't be able to pray the God. Okay, so sometimes I feel like, in order to make things easier and simpler, within the nature, Krishna would show different paths to reach to him. I mean, maybe we are lucky enough to see him now and realize, I mean, at least say his name now. But there are lots of people around us who don't even consider him. But still, the faith and belief in them is to the God, even though they don't say it. And
Yes. Actually, Krishna explains that in the Bhagavad Gita when he speaks about the worship of demigods. He actually explains that he's the one who gives them faith in their worship. He also explains as well from another perspective that to worship demigods, then one is less intelligent, because the fruits that one gets from those demigods is temporary. That's another point. But I think your point is taken, and that's mentioned in, I think we read that as well, isn't it, in chapter 3, did we? That we shouldn't unnecessarily disturb the minds of people. Instead, engage them in acts of devotion, by which they can gradually come to the correct understanding. So there might be some specific instance or circumstances where you're going to encourage someone in their particular practice of faith, especially if that practice is somewhat of a sattvic nature. You know, then you're going to want to encourage them. Again, it very much depends on the person who you may be speaking to. Yeah. But it's a good point it's taken. It's there in, Krishna explains that in Bhagavad Gita, that actually he, even if someone has faith in a demigod, he is giving them that faith. Why? Because at least they're accepting a cause higher than themselves, and they're following the they're actually following the Vedic marg, they're actually following the Vedic path, and that will make them at least pious. So in some situations, you're not going to want to discourage persons, but you may engage them in acts of devotion, which means like you may share, you may invite them to a temple, you may invite them to a festival, you may invite them to your house to come and see your Murti of Krishna. You may even read parts of the Bhagavad Gita. You know? Is that okay? Thank you.
Yeah, it's clear. I mean, on that front, sorry if I'm taking a minute here. If we say like even the demigods are the devotees of Lord Krishna, and even a devotee who is far superior than us, and if we are in association with him, he makes he makes sure that he brings us to the level of his and see the Krishna from his perspective. Let's say we call. I mean, if we take Srila Prabhupada, he's a great devotee of Lord Krishna. Likewise, there are a lot of demigods who are devotees of Krishna who admire Krishna.
Yeah.
So sometimes these things correlate and gives us some sort of ambiguity to me, saying that serving a devotee is itself is like serving a Krishna.
Yeah.
So
long as we should. We're taught by Srila. We're taught to have great respect for the demigods for that point that you actually made. They're actually empowered by Krishna to lead universal affairs, so they're to be given great respect, and they are devotees of Krishna, so we should give them great respect. But our worship will always go towards Krishna, and we will worship them in respect to their specific relationship to Krishna. Yeah. But thank you. Very good.
Can we give an example? Sorry, can you give an example of how the gopis were worshipping Katyani, but their aim was Krishna?
Yeah, you could explain.
That. I thought my thing is making noise. That's why, like, okay, you like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited lots of Lord Shiva temples, but our mood should be that, okay, we go to demigod temple or whatever, but we should be always praying that let me surrender to the personality that you are surrendered to. Lord Shiva is always meditating on Krishna. So if we go to Shiva temple, but pray for him to connect us to Krishna, then it's like you sharing a great Vaishnav. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, and the gopis did the Katyani Vrat to attend Krishna as their husbands.
Yeah, thank you, Mother Chandra. That's a very good. And,
what is a Katyani? Sorry for interrupting. What is a Katyani?
Yeah, 1 second. So you're going to find examples of this. Specifically, Chandravali is quoting from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where it's describing the actual personal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan, and they would pray. For instance, the Katyani. This is a form of Durga. Actually, is that correct? Yeah. So there were young girls. So they would pray to Krishna to obtain Krishna as their husband, So, yes, so in that way, we can pray to Lord Shiva, for example. He's known as a great Vaishnava, and we fall down at their feet, just like we should do for any. Yeah, Katyani is Durga. Yeah, I believe. Yeah, just like we do that for any devotee. Yeah, so we shouldn't be disrespectful to anyone. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said we should respect even the ants, let alone great demigods. But we understand their position in relationship to Krishna. Yeah, very good points. Anybody else on this? Otherwise, if we like, we can.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I think it's also for us devotees important to distinguish what is the actual difference between, say, for example, Krishna and Lord Shiva, because I know he's like the most worshipped demigod, but some think that he is the supreme personality. But when you actually read the first, I don't know, 9 chapters in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it explains that what is the avatar. That avatar simply means to descend, and that Krishna descended to release the world from the demons.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
And
that's,
another important thing,
please, yes.
it also mentions that Krishna is the owner of 100% of the opulences, whereas Lord Shiva has around 84% of the opulences, and Jivas such as us or Lord Brahma have just 78% of the opulences.
Yes, so thank you, Mother Katarina. So she's quoting there from the Vaishnav canon, from the Vaishnav scripture, and specifically she was quoting from the Nectar of Devotion by Rupa Goswami, which makes the comparison of the demigods and then Lord Shiva, and then the comparison to Lord Krishna, who's in possession of all opulences to an unlimited degree, and a certain percentage of those are manifested in Lord Shiva, and a certain percentage of those are manifested in Jiva. And also the Srimad Bhagavatam as well. There's the prayers of Lord Shiva is there, and in many places Lord Shiva is mentioned in the Bhagavatam as, and he specifically, his meditation of Lord Shiva is on not Krishna, it's on Shankarshan. Yeah, he's meditating on a specific form of Krishna. Now, you're going to get the followers of Lord Shiva. For them, Lord Shiva is the supreme. But then often the worship of Lord Shiva is accompanied by often a impersonal conception that the world, God, and everything collected together is all the Shiva energy. And they hope to realize their non-difference between themselves and Lord Shiva. And that's a Shakti that pervades all the worlds. It's Shiva Shakti. So they got their own particular, and the discussion goes back hundreds of years between your classic worship of Lord Shiva, and then you got the Vaishnavas. So it's, but from our, not from, we say from the absolute perspective, taking the words of our acharyas and Sukadeva Goswami, we accept Krishna. Krishna's too, Bhagavan Swayam, as it's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, excuse me. So that's quite a big discussion. But yes, thank you, Katarina, for reminding us of that. Okay.
There's one small thing that I'd like to add with regards
Please.
to Lord Shiva that I had read. It is when Krishna's energy mixed with the material energies is when the Shiva Shiva Tattva is comes into existence. And just like Krishna is milk and Shiva Tattva is curd, it's when you contaminate the milk with a little piece of curd or acidic property, it turns the entire milk into curd. Similarly, when material energy mixes with Krishna's energy is when the Shiva Tattva comes into existence.
Yes, thank you, Dhananjay. I think you're quoting in part from the Brahma Samhita. Yeah. And yeah, Lord Shiva's not the Jiva and he's not the supreme, but he's in between. So
between both.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've studied Shiva Tattva by studying Bhagavatam, and I still don't fully understand. It's very deep subject matter. There's different expansions, there's different Rudras, there are different expansions, but the glance by which Krishna glances over the material energy and then impregnates it with the Jivas, that glance is Lord Shiva. All right, so there's a lot to say about Lord Shiva. Perhaps let's read another verse, shall we, and see where this takes us, unless someone's got some...
Prabhu?
Yes.
Yes. Can I just quickly jump in? I think if we want to properly understand Krishna in relation to the avatars, it's also important because I've heard from many, many people saying, oh, but Krishna is also avatar. How can you say he is supreme? So it's important.
I just missed the first part. Krishna, they say Krishna is?
Krishna is also avatar. So how can you say he is the supreme? You know, so the Srimad Bhagavatam, can you hear me?
I can, yes, now I can. Yes, sorry.
Yes. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, it explains that although he descended as an avatar, he descended as himself. And from all the avatars that he descended in, he has actually the unique pastime that other avatars don't have, which is the Rasa Lila with the gopis. So that's what makes him superior as well.
Yes, yes, yeah. There's one particular well-known verse in Bhagavatam. It's known as the Faustuti. No, not Faustuti. What's the word? Paribhasha Sutra. One of the most important verses in Bhagavatam. Eche kamsa kala pumsa Krishnas tu Bhagavan Swayam Indriyani Vyalokam Mita Genti Yuge Yuge. So a whole list of incarnations has been described. And then Sukadev Goswami says, but of all these incarnations, Lord Krishna is the supreme. Yeah. And if anyone is really into a scholarly presentation on this, there's one book written by Jiva Goswami. I think it's he wrote this book called these books called these Sandarbhas, and one of those books is called the Bhagavad Sandarbha, and it's a whole thesis on the subject of Krishna being supreme in compared to any other demigods or etc. etc. It's a whole thesis, really interesting, and it's a really scholarly read. Though you really got to sit down with pen and paper. But he brings up so many evidences from the scriptures, etc., proving Krishna's position. Yes. Okay, thank you. So let's read number 4, shall we? I see Madhu Mango, you have your hand up. So again, if anyone has any questions, you're quite welcome to unmute, as you've been hearing devotees do, or you can put in the chat as well. I'm going to move the page. Hare Krishna. Are you there, Madhu Mango? You can.
4, yeah?
Yes, that's correct.
Arjuna uvacha aparam bhavato janma paramam janma vivashvata katam etat vijaniyam tvam adau praktavan iti. Arjuna say, the sun god Vivashvan is senior by Vivasvan is senior by birth to you. How I understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him, purport. Arjuna is accepted devotee of the Lord, so how could he not believe Krishna's word? The fact is that Arjuna is not inquiring for himself, but for those who do not believe in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or for the demons who do not like the idea that Krishna should be accepted as a Supreme Personality of Godhead. For them, only Arjuna inquires on this point, as if he were himself not aware of the personality of Godhead or Krishna. As it will be evident for the 10th canto, Arjuna knew perfectly well that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the fountain of everything. And the last word in the transcendence, of course, Krishna also appeared as the son of Devaki on this earth. How Krishna remained the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, the eternal original person, is very difficult for an ordinary man to understand. Therefore, to clarify this point, Arjuna put this question before Krishna so that he himself could speak authoritatively. That Krishna is the supreme authority is accepted by the whole world, not only at present, but from time immemorial, and the demons alone reject him. Anyway, since Krishna is the authority accepted by all, Arjuna put his question before him in order that Krishna would describe himself without being depicted by the demons, who always try to distort him in any way and in a way understandable to the demons and their followers. It is necessary that everyone, for his own interest, know the science of Krishna. Therefore, when Krishna himself speaks about himself, it is auspicious for all the world. To the demons, such explanation by Krishna himself may appear to the strange, because the demons always study Krishna for their own standpoint. But those who are devoted heartily welcome the statement of Krishna when they are spoken by Krishna himself. The devotee will always worship such authoritative statements of Krishna because they are always eager to know more and more about him. The atheists who consider Krishna an ordinary man
Excuse
may
me,
in this way,
excuse me, I think I haven't, do I need to switch the page? I'm trying to find where you're reading from. Okay, yes, sorry, please excuse me, those who are watching on the screen, I didn't flip the page.
the atheists who consider Krishna an ordinary man may in this way come to know that Krishna is superhuman, that he is Sachitananda Vigraha, the eternal form of bliss and knowledge, that he is transcendental, and that he is above the domination of the modes of material nature and above the influence of time and space. A devotee of Krishna like Arjuna is undoubtedly above any misunderstanding of the transcendental position of Krishna. Arjuna putting his question before the Lord is simply an attempt by the devotee to defy the atheistic attitude of a person who consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being, subject to the modes of material nature.
Okay, thank you, Madhu Mangalpur. Hare Krishna. So any particular immediate questions on this or reflections? I just like to highlight one thing, specifically Arjuna's mood here of addressing Krishna or asking him. It's not in a challenging mood. He says, how am I to understand? Yeah. So his question reflects this kind of a healthy blend of disarming humility and curiosity. He's not challenging Krishna, that the mood is very submissive. How am I to understand? So we might want it to hear, we can get an idea of how we might ask questions to a spiritual authority. We might hear something that is contradictory. So rather than saying, what is this you're saying? It doesn't make sense, how am I to understand, So anyway, one thing, and here Arjuna is clearing things up for other people. Yep, Krishna's actual position. And the next verses, I think the verses from now on, I think there's another 10 verses, is going to be Krishna's going to speaking about his transcendental position. Yeah, and then the next verses will come after that, is the results of understanding the position of Krishna. That's Janma Karma Chame Divyam, etc. Yep. So any particular questions or comments here? I'm just going to just little notes I have here. I also like to read from, those of you who know, we like to read from a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita by one disciple of Prabhupada. It's called Surrender Unto Me. He often gives some quite insightful notes based on the purports from other acharyas, from other teachers. So he says, well, little notes here. So Krishna explained that one receives transcendental knowledge through dislipic succession. Yeah, so that's how it is not it's not like a mundane subject. It's almost has a mysterious aspect to it, that it's revealed according to your attitude. You will understand it. If you have an attitude like, for instance, Arjuna, and that attitude is also evidenced by your, could say, submissively humbling oneself before an authority in the parampara. And that's mentioned later as well. Krishna explains that need that one should, to understand the truth, one should render service and inquire from a spiritual master in a tattva. So in that way, it's not just for anyone. There's a particular type of person who can enter into the mysteries. And so they will live a particular lifestyle, the lifestyle being as a devotee. So that knowledge comes through, then that knowledge will come through the dislipic succession or the spiritual master to the disciple. So that's how it comes down, evam parampara praptam, that's described. Yeah. Now the problem is, because Krishna explained that he spoke it to Vivasvan. I think we know what the problem is. So Vivasvan happens to be, I think, the sun god, Vivasvan. So he happens to be thousands of years old in comparison to the manifestation of Krishna. Yeah. So on our behalf, so obviously persons are going to challenge that. So again, this is why in order to understand this, you have to accept, at least theoretically, Mr. Atheist, that Krishna's God. Because he said he instructed it thousands of years ago. And for Krishna, at least in his presence on earth, he wasn't present for thousands of years. So he's asking a question. I'm just paraphrasing a particular mood, maybe. Krishna, you said you gave it to Vivasvan, but how old are you? And Vivasvan, doesn't he took birth thousands of years ago? I don't quite. So that's when Krishna gets an opportunity to speak about his transcendental position. And he's going to bring that up in the next verse. Yeah. Many births, both you and I have passed, and that we know, that was mentioned in the second chapter. The soul is eternal. But the difference between Krishna and Arjuna, and are given a fifth verse away that Krishna can remember. Yeah, so Vivasvan is thousands of years old. Yeah. So how could he possibly instruct the science to Vivasvan? Yeah. Krishna also asks later on, where else in Bhagavad Gita does Krishna, or does Arjuna, he wants Krishna to he wants him to prove that he's God, because he explains his opulences, and then for the sake of persons who may be lacking in faith, then Arjuna asks specifically Krishna to, I'm trying to say the question without giving the answer, to display his godhood.
Universal form.
Yes, Mavalabangalatis got it. Yeah, in the universal form. Yeah. But that gets a bit too much for Arjuna, that universal form, and he becomes quite unhinged and loses his equibalance, and yes, we should read about that. Yeah. So yeah, this is Krishna's transcendental position. Yeah. So this question is asked for the benefit of others. Yeah. Now Krishna's going to get an opportunity now to speak about himself. So Krishna is superhuman. Anyone, well, I guess perhaps depends where you were brought up, but we have this concept in Western, I can't call it culture, I guess, Superman. Anyone heard of Superman? It's a cartoon character, which is an invincible person who saves the world from calamity. It's interesting that quest or that hope is there from the Jiva of someone who's going to save us, someone who's going to redeem us. That's a natural instinct of a Jiva, that he or she is looking for that. And that's the role of, could say, God. That's the role he plays. And it's not just an abstract definition that we give in Vaishnavism, but we even other faiths, they believe they have faith in God, but you could say the Vaishnava tradition gives actually detailed accounts of God's manifestation upon this Bhoma, upon this earth. And so here we're reading his words, yeah, which to this day is giving enlightenment to thousands of people, you know. So this is Krishna's, Krishna is superhuman. As mentioned, he's Satchit Ananda. Difficult for us to conceive, but he has a body of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Okay. Anybody else like to add to this? Any other questions or comments? Again,
Prabhu, I posted a question if you can have a look.
Okay, have a look in the chat. Oh, it didn't come up as a red mark. Normally it comes up as a red mark. Perhaps I clicked it. What's the difference between Swarup and Virat Rupa? Okay, I'll offer that question out. Swarup, anyone knows the difference between, I think, the two words are different, they're different contexts, but Dhananjay Prabhu, you could help us here? And there are...
I mean, I try to understand based on my understanding. So it is, Swarup is basically the actual form, and Virat Rup is basically the form that is not comprehensible by the human brain, by human perception. Virat Rup is basically the
Material form.
all-pervading form.
Yes.
Universal form, yeah.
Universal form, that's correct, yeah. And I think
Yeah.
Sahachari mentioned.
Swarup is something like which could be comprehensible. The original Krishna's form is like Swarup.
Yeah, and Mother Sahachari, I heard her say, she just mentioned that the difference between the two is one is spiritual, say with Krishna, and the Virat Rupa is actually a material manifestation, actually, of the Shaktis of, you could say, the Virat Rupa, the universal form. So does that help, Mother Katarina?
The gigantic form and the big form?
Yeah,
The
the
little...
Virat Rupa, well, the Virat Rupa is the universal form. The Virat Rupa, and it's given as a first step in God realization for those who cannot comprehend God being a person. Yeah, that's given in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the first steps in God realization. Then the Virat Rupa is given, that you see, for instance, the oceans are, or the rivers are the Lord's veins, the mountains are his bones, like that, the Virat Rupa. And in that way, one contemplates an aspect of transcendence. They're taught to not think about their own selfish needs, but to think about the universe. Yeah, and that is the first step to understanding. So that's called the Virat Rupa. Where does the Chaturbuja form fall into? So can anyone help us with this Chaturbuja? Dhananjaya, you know what this word means, Chaturbuja?
Chatur means, Chatur means four, Bhuja means hands. So four-handed form is, I think, based on Sachari Devi's answer, I was able to relate. Chatur Bhuj means four-handed form.
Yeah. So
Vishnu Swarup.
yeah, so that form is the next one down. That's what, when Arjuna asked Krishna to it's too much, the universal form, then Krishna manifests as the four-arm form. Then eventually he manifests as a two-arm form, which is said that all sweetness comes from. So Chaturbuj is the four-arm form of the Lord, maybe one of the Vishnus, the Vishnu incarnations of the Lord. Okay, so four. So Bhuja, hands, Chatur means four. Thank you, Dhananjay. We need you here. Can you help us?
Everything is same divine. Right?
Yes. Anybody, are we amazing? We've got just 3 minutes left. Is that the right time? Anybody else like to make any comments on this?
And this is where the point again comes back. It's like, in order to make humans understand what Krishna is, he comes to any level, right? I mean, if Arjuna can't see that, the actual form of Krishna, he has come to Virat Rupa, and if it's not that, he has come to two-handed form, like normal human form.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, very good. That's interesting, because actually on further deeper study, for instance, if you study the Nectar of Devotion and the books we've mentioned, it's actually described that the Swayam Rupa, the two-arm form, is the original from which all the other forms come from. That's also where he's quoting from Srimad Bhagavatam, Echi Kamsa Kalapam Sam. So even all the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, Kishora Dakshaya Vishnu, Mahavishnu, all these forms originally are manifestations coming from Krishna, the two-armed original form. So it's known as Swayam Rupa. So then he manifests his Shaktis through the Guna avatar, or through the different avatars like Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, Kushodakshaya Vishnu, etc. And then from those manifestations come all the different incarnations. But they originally, according to, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam, they're all originally coming from Krishna. So that's why it's described that Krishna, then he refers back to his original form from which nectar comes. And that's Krishna's two-armed form. Yeah, so that comes up in, we will read through that, or you can go to that and read already in the 11th chapter, read the purport there. But thank you for your point, very interesting point. All right, let's pause there for today, and we're going to continue tomorrow. So please join us. Thank you everyone for joining us. And someone sent me, I saw a question that I missed last week. So I answered it by email. So you can do that if you like. If you have any comments, questions, further thoughts, you can send me an email, or you can put them as comments on the YouTube. We'll put this up before 12 o'clock tomorrow, all things being equal. So if you have any further comments to add, you're quite welcome to put them there, okay? So thank you, everyone. Thank you for sparing this last hour to be with Krishna and Arjuna and the devotees describing Bhagavad Gita. And please join us tomorrow, same time.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare